Hey guys, Coach here. Hey, welcome to this week's podcast, the first one of 2025. Hey, we're titling this one Establishing a Landscape Budget. Sometimes one of the hardest things to know how to do based on the knowledge you have of current materials that need to be brought on board in order to accomplish the project. I mean, honestly, what could be more demoralizing or dejecting than wanting to do a medium-sized to large-sized backyard by yourself or bringing in a professional, and you've saved and saved and saved what you thought was enough, only to find out that you're thousands of dollars short in the end because you just don't know what you don't know. You know, today we're going to discuss establishing a realistic current dollars budget for your landscape project so you can stay at or below the budget and actually enjoy the landscape journey that you want to get into. So, welcome to this week's podcast. I appreciate you being here. Hope you had a great holiday season. Hope you're looking forward to 2025. Let's get this thing rolling. You know, another holiday season is in the rearview mirror. I hope yours was healthy. I hope it was sane. Hope you didn't go into the poorhouse getting all the widgets that everybody wanted. For Maestro and I, it was quiet. It was peaceful. This year, it was a very white Christmas. Last year, we didn't have a stitch of snow on the ground, which is pretty unusual this far north. But this year, yeah, we did. We actually got the snowmobile out, and we actually took it out for a day and had a good time. Now we're putting that stuff behind us, and now we're looking forward to 2025. So, this whole establishing a budget thing applies to whether you're doing it yourself, being chief cook and bottle washer, or you're hiring a professional landscape designer and contractor for the project. And how do you come about knowing where to set the budget? I mean, if you want a new backyard with a pool and water features and landscaping and irrigation and lighting and outdoor kitchen and, misting system and sound systems, and you have $7,000 in your pocket, this is why I bring this particular episode to bear, because that is a Google Images HGTV mentality with a beer income type of thing. You have to understand that in this day and age, professional landscaping is some of the most expensive endeavors that a homeowner can actually hire to be done. And it's odd for a lot of people who are not in the industry because you just don't know how expensive this stuff is. I mean, a stick of PVC pipe that used to cost literally $1.79 for 10 feet is now $6. And you look at that and you just go, but it's a piece of PVC pipe. You look at a gallon can boxwood that used to be $3.99 and now it's $9.99. And you start multiplying all these parts and pieces out and you come up with a materials cost. And then if you're hiring someone to do it, they have to dovetail in their administrative costs, their employee costs, their vehicle costs, the materials cost, and if there's anything left and the person has done a good job estimating, there's a profit margin at the end. And that doesn't mean that that professional puts that profit margin right into his pocket and go, ha ha ha, I made $5,000 off of this. No, then he has to start, or she has to start paying taxes on it and unemployment insurance and workers' comp and all the other stuff that go into that. So hiring a contractor does eliminate a lot of the headache for you, sort of, but not always. And if you're doing it DIY style, it actually is easier if you can set yourself a good budget and you have educated yourself, starting with this episode, on how much stuff actually costs, how much other steps that I go into in other videos and podcasts that you need to do in order to pull this thing off within a time frame and a budget that makes sense. And it doesn't, send you to the poorhouse. It doesn't make you end up eating a can of Campbell's soup three times a day in order to afford it. So let's take a look at step number one. And I'm basing this all on a few things. Number one, my professional experience of how I have seen people come up with the dollars, both DIY dollars and professional dollars, and how I have done things as well, successful projects as well, both landscaping. I mean, Maestro and I, we set budgets for everything that we did last year. We really did. They weren't huge budgets because we're not huge budget people, but it worked and we stayed at or below what we wanted to spend. So step one, before anything, anywhere, you get online or you go to your file cabinet and you review your resource statements. How much do you actually have? How much can you tap into that is feasible and reasonable? And when you do look at it, is this something that you could do an all cash project and pay for everything up front? Or will you have to kind of create some financing options, maybe blend a 50-50 with cash and financing of one kind or another? And just knowing how you can or cannot pay for it, that little step one, that little bit of knowledge is going to set you on a path that tells you, yeah, we can do that this year or we cannot do that this year. Take, for instance, if you look at your bank statement and you see that you have 10 grand in a checking and $30,000 in a savings, and you have some investment things, and you have a total of maybe liquidity, you have a total of maybe $50,000, and you have X number of dollars of equity in your home. Maybe that is $10,000 in equity. Maybe it's $150,000 in equity. So you can write this down as you learn exactly, because we don't always look at financial things every single day. Some of us do, some of us don't. I don't. I kind of have a ballpark figure and that's all I know every single day. But if I needed to tap into it, I would certainly take an hour and look into everything that I have. So once you see what you have and you have written it down or printed it out or whatever, you move on to step two. And step two is something that seems relatively easy. However, my experience has been that sometimes it can be the most difficult. And that is communicating with any other decision maker in the process. That decision maker could be a life partner, that could be a spouse, it could be an elderly parent that you have in the house now and they're going to be part of the project. Anything, anybody who's going to have a financial skin in the game, you communicate. Say, hey, we've got this many dollars that we could put towards this project, and how big a project, because in step two, you're going to determine exactly what is the scope of the project. How big a project is this going to be? Is it going to be just putting in a new lawn? Is it putting in a vegetable garden, a fancy vegetable garden? Or are you ripping it right down to scorched earth and rebuilding the whole front yard or backyard? That's what you have to determine. Now, step three is a comparison. Based on step two, communicating, determining the scope, you're going to compare it to step one. And you're going to say, okay, our scope of the project is going to be A, B, C, D, E, and F. And we have, from step one, we have $20,000 that we can invest into this project. And on the surface, it seems like the scope of the project and your resources are going to match up pretty good. Not too bad. So if they do match up, hey, perfect. If they don't match up, then we have to go back to step two and kind of maybe adjust the scope of the project, or back to step one and increase the amount of resources, maybe through financing, to get to where we want financially in order to afford the project that we really want. We want to shoot for, if you have 10 things you're looking to put into a landscape and you want to shoot for all 10, but your budget says you can only afford 6 out of the 10, the rest of it's going to have to be made up with financing. Make that decision. Make that decision and find out where you can tap into, and make sure that you can afford the new debt level that might, come out of that second mortgage, that HELOC, that borrowing from grandma, wherever it might come from. The one thing that I want you to take away from this is I want you to be able to sleep at night. I want you to be able to say, okay, I'm going to throw $20,000 into this backyard so it makes it much more functional and livable and enjoyable compared to what it is now. And as long as you can do that, now we have to determine, will that $20,000 carry you to a professional install, or is $20,000 a DIY install? Because if it was professional, maybe your project is $40,000 on a professional level. So moving on to step 4. Now we've covered 3 steps so far. We've talked about reviewing your finances. Step 2 was communicating with other decision makers. And then step 3 was comparing step 1 and step 2. Can you do what you want to do with the resources that you have? Now step 4 is, after adjusting one way or another, I'd love for you to go out and make it a fun thing, but go out and do some due diligence as far as what your scope of the project is. Go out and price plant material, irrigation material if it's necessary, decking material if it's part of the project. How much is that hot tub that you want to put in? What is that pondless waterfall going to cost as part of the new project? And write it all down. How much is a cubic yard of loam to bring in to berm up an area? What are the boulders cost per pound, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And take a day. Nothing wrong with grabbing a cup of coffee at your local favorite and go out and price these things. And then maybe after you've done a morning, hey, go out to lunch and enjoy yourself and talk about what you've learned, write stuff down, and then take a couple hours in the afternoon and finish it off. Step 5, it's the bottom of the funnel. You've put all this information in the top of the funnel, and we have agitated it all down to step 5, coming out the bottom of that funnel. And that's a final determination. Number 1, will this be a DIY project? Or is it a hire out? Number 2, set a final top ceiling budget that still gets what you think you want, and either call some professionals for estimates or take your sketch from whatever you've drawn up and move forward with the project under your own DIY power. I'll tell you this, of all the landscape projects I have done for my own personal property, I can only think of one. Weed Patch Ranch, where my store and I used to live, was the largest landscape project I have ever done. Out of the 2.5 acres that we had, I landscaped about 1.5 acres. And I was fully engaged in full-time contractual work back then, and resources were a lot deeper than they are now. And I can only remember getting hit with a finance was on the large backyard concrete thing. And it was my fault. It was not my contractor's fault. I thought that we could get it done for, say, $5,000, and it turned out to be $6,500. It wasn't way off, but it was like, okay, fine, all right, we'll get it done. But what you don't want to have that feeling of, let's get this thing done for 5, when realistically it's going to take 15, and you should have learned that through these 5-step process. So don't kick yourself in the butt if you didn't do it right. Just understand that DIY projects that get really, really involved tend to go over budget because people are not in the industry and they may not know how to tap into wholesale plant material, or they may not know how to buy a sod lawn at a wholesale level. Everything has to be retail. It has to be box store. There's a lot of other options that you can do out there, but setting that budget is going to set the tone for the entire project. And you have to understand that most of the time in a DIY budget, we always chintz out on ourselves. We tend to say, well, it's just another $100. It's a couple $100 more. We're worth it. And then as you multiply those things through the project itself, your final budget ceiling of whatever, you've blown it out of the water. For professionals, what we do is we come in and we talk to you. We either review a design that's been done for you or we do one for you. And we try to make that design budget friendly if you have told us what your ceiling is. And then we go out and we source all of our materials from the suppliers that we know and we've done business with before. And we stay under the estimate that matches your budget. And sometimes you may have more budget than the project actually costs. There's been several occasions where people say, now, Matt, we have $10,000 to spend on this. So if you do the estimate, we can't go over that. And I would say, okay. And at that point, based on the conversation I've had with the client, I can tell them that by all means, we can get this job done for that $10,000 or less. Or I have to tell them there's no way in hell. There's no way in hell I'm going to be able to do this for $10,000. You have at least $10,000 just in materials alone. And then I see their sad, pouty face, and we talk a little bit more about maybe downsizing the project, and they may or may not want to do that. Or sometimes they'll say, well, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming by. And they go source it out to someone else. And most of the time, I kind of knew a lot of my competition, so I would maybe drive by the house 2 months later, and you would see some unlicensed contractor there putting a version of what they wanted in because they found a handyman to do it for, $10,000 or less. And it showed at the end of the project. So if you're going to do it with a professional, make sure that you sit down and you're honest with them. Now, I've always learned folks really hold their cards close to the vest when it comes to money itself, talking to a stranger, a contractor coming in. It doesn't do you any good, and it certainly doesn't do the contractor any good. The people who I've really enjoyed the most working for was always ones who were upfront. And they'd say, we have 10 grand to spend. Can you do it for 10 grand? And we'd have that honest conversation. And they would be just ecstatic if I came in and said, hey, it's $8,800. All right, let's get going. Put me on the schedule. Or I'd come back and I'd go, your 10 grand almost got it, but here's why it's 13. And I would explain to them, here's all the materials and the costs and my profit margins, etc. And they'd either make the decision of yes or no. So establishing a budget on one of these things really paves a smooth highway to success. If you just go into it without setting any form of financial limit, then you're either a very rich person or not really fiscally responsible like you should be stepping off into this DIY project pool. So think about it. I mean, think about where that can be really difficult. I mean, imagine if you don't talk to your significant. Imagine if you don't review your finances. Imagine if you did step 1 and 2, but you didn't do 3. And then you jumped off into getting estimates and you're gobsmacked when, contractor A comes in with a $18,000 estimate and you only have 9 to put towards this whole project. And then you yell at them going, why are you so expensive? I didn't tell you what our budget was, but under your breath, you're going, this son of a bitch is trying to rip me off. And it's really not the case. It's really not at all. Now, there is a trick in the contractor trade, and I'll share this with you. A lot of people will not like me for it, but contractors who are overbooked, they have got the jobs, but they don't have the time to do it, and more estimate requests keep coming in. Some contractors, especially people who have maybe 2 crews, will sometimes fluff the estimate up by thousands and thousands of dollars to satisfy you getting an estimate, but the cost of that job for them is, wow, I'd make a lot of money. And then they start juggling jobs. They'll start going, hey, I gave an estimate to old Matt there, and it's probably only a $9,000 job at best, but I gave him 18 to get his estimate, and he accepted it. So I'm going to put Matt on the schedule in 3 weeks, and I'm put the Smiths off because of availability or something. I'm going to put them off for 6 because the Smiths job is just a simple little dinky patio paver thing that's going to cost $3,500. I got 18,000 over here. I'm going to chase that dollar. So don't think that doesn't happen. That was one thing that I liked about really being small and doing one job at a time. And I didn't have to line up all these people and all these estimates and all these jobs. I was able just to go work for the Smiths, finish the job. Then I was scheduled with the Jones, and then I was scheduled with Matt's job, and then Maestro's job, and whatever. And it was really, really easier on me. And I didn't have a lot of the headaches after a while of keeping a lot of people employed and having a lot of jobs. You know, contractors, they can be braggiose sometimes. They really can. Yeah, I got $150,000 worth of work in the next 6 weeks. What you got, Matt? Hey, that's really good. Yeah. Man, I'm working like 16 hours a day. I'm just raking it in. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm gonna go fishing and camping this weekend. What are you gonna do? Oh man, I can't do anything till winter. Gotta go. Gotta make those dollars while they're there. And that was the contractor that I was not. I could not ever get to be that state. And I made a good living anyway. Anyway, we're getting off down a tangent. This is basically what I have for you today to start off the new year. We talk about step 1, reviewing and acknowledging exactly what you have available as far as resources, determining whether you're going to do it all cash or you're going to do some financing with it. Then you're going to go into step 2 and communicate with other decision makers. And step 1 and 2 can also be done almost simultaneously. But then we go into step 3 and we compare the scope of the project to the resources that we have and adjust accordingly. Step 4 is going out and taking a whole day and compiling the costs of materials, especially if it's a DIY project. And then step 5, making a final determination about, number 1, is it DIY or is it going to be a pro project? Setting the final top ceiling of the money that you want to spend and getting some estimates from professionals, making sure that they have your sketch or a design in their hands so they can make a knowledgeable estimate for you. And then get your project off and doing the other 15 steps that I always offer on the website. That little checklist is worth its weight in gold for a little $5 bill. It really is. So anyway, thanks for staying with me. We'll be back every week now. We've taken our holiday break. It's time to crunch and crush and just get things going. Everybody will start turning their attention back towards outdoor projects as the weeks and months evolve here for 2025. Hey, as always, to your landscape success, please visit the website if you want some additional education or if you want to sit down with me on a Zoom call for an hour and really discuss your budget, your project, etc. YourYardCoach.com. I'll catch you guys next Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.